All right, so welcome to Growing Up Cannabis. This week's episode is cannabis and the LGBTQ community. I have my featured guest, Elisa, with me today, and we'll be talking about LGBT community and cannabis community. Say hello to the audience.
Hi. Hi. Nice to meet you guys.
So, as we all know, like the cannabis world was started up on the streets. A lot of people are in prison for it, especially Black men. Right now, we're going through the Black Lives Matters movement. Hopefully, it doesn't stick as a trend and more of a lifestyle for everybody. There's just so many Black and Hispanic men imprisoned right now for minor cannabis charges, weed charges. While a lot of people know the industry is coveted by white male business investments and white male dispensaries that are legally happening, like places like California, while people in specifically in New York, from my knowledge, have been facing years of charges just for a small amount of weed and selling, while the white man is marketing it.
Yeah, most definitely. Especially in New York, the whole LGBT community and weed obviously are intertwined. I mean, this goes all the way back for the Stonewall riots, which incorporates with what is happening right now with the Black Lives Matter movement. Black Lives goes so back within the LGBTQ community, especially since the first Pride riot was started by Black gay community.
Yeah, Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera. So Pride started as a riot before it was what it is today. I know you've been to Pride. Can you tell me the atmosphere of Pride, why you decided to go?
Yeah, so this would have been my 5th year actually going to Pride. I started going to Pride when I realized that I was romantically and sexually attracted towards women, but I'm also attracted towards men as well. So as a bisexual individual, I wanted representation. I wanted to speak out my pride for who I am and find my community and comfort within that community. So when I found out about Pride and was old enough to go, obviously, my first year and every year after that has just been amazing. The vibe is just, it's so like positive and no one judges you. Like no matter what you wear, who you're with, it's just completely happy and positive vibes. It's a good message overall.
That's good, because within the cannabis and LGBT community, they face the same difficulty of not being respected and legally recognized. And with Pride Month and all the parades, helps embrace the community, helps people find sort of a safe haven and a place to be free and scream as loud as they want and just enjoy everybody's company and be there for the same reasons and support of everybody, especially not knowing a lot of people that are there, but still finding comfort in the people surrounding you.
Yeah, most definitely.
A lot of companies are advertising during the LGBT community's Pride Week, Pride Month. A lot of the money, revenue in the cannabis world, especially in specific places like California, the LGBT community raises or comes to a larger revenue of money spent. They call it pink dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So over the past couple of years, decades, we've seen medical cannabis being of use, and they say within the queer community, it's definitely in large intake because of the suffering with homelessness, mental and physical illnesses. Just helps as a coping mechanism. And we just see things like queer communities being under-recognized in a lot of scenarios, a lot of situations, especially in a business world that is coveted and filled with the white male money.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, you're right. I definitely think the peak of businesses, they market especially during the month of June to raise those pink dollars. But I definitely think that the cannabis industry has always been true to the LGBTQ community, and that they're not using it to profit off of them compared to other companies.
Yeah, exactly. I think, like, compared to other companies, they're like, oh, let me dip in June, but the rest of the year, let's not support, because this is the only time that I'd make any type of revenue in support of that, so they could spend their money here. But a lot of companies do year-round support it, especially queer people in the community of cannabis, and opening up their own dispensaries and having their own marketing and franchise sort of situation, especially in bigger places like California, because it is legal in California. The LGBT community and cannabis really started with the beginning of the era of HIV and AIDS that hit the queer community. It drove the medical use of cannabis. California took a large part in becoming legal for medical cannabis community. Queer communities face like higher chances of mental illnesses, just like I said. What's your take on that?
It is true, because the LGBT people, they are people who are marginalized and oppressed, and I feel like because of that, they do have a lot of like people within the community are depressed. They have anxiety. They have suicidal thoughts because people aren't always accepted. So it is true that the use of smoking weed has been more popular within the LGBTQ community, especially these days as well.
Yeah, definitely as a coping mechanism, especially with homelessness. We see a lot of videos, which is the height of everything is like a video, capturing everything on the phone, with like a lot of the queer community just being like kicked out of their homes, not being accepted, being oppressed, and then seeking the cannabis route to help deal with all of this like oppression just that's weighted on them.
Yeah.
Personal experience, like we all have social media. Have you ever come across the videos of just like kids getting kicked out, kids not being accepted, like that, like especially during Pride, when everybody's like feels like this is the height of like everybody coming out just to feel like appreciated and have something to like fall on for like support.
Yeah, like especially during the actual Pride parade, you would still see those people who actually protest against the parade and its meaning. So obviously a lot of religious groups come out saying that, holding posters saying that gays and the community are an abomination to God and such as that. So even at such the peak of a moment, there will still be people who speak against it.
Yeah, exactly. There will always be, like, just like with all the Black Lives Matters protests, there's still people that are protesting, like, our KKK situation right now, down south, just something like that. With the cannabis community, it's hard to be a queer Black man and also be in the cannabis community and face, like, the charges that would be a smaller charge or revenue income for another man, specifically a white man in the cannabis community. I feel like it's all within reason of the Black Lives Matter movement and Pride being together within 2020, because riots and protests were started by a trans woman, which is Marsha, and everybody tends to forget that trans lives matter as well, especially because it was a trans Black life.
Yes, no, I completely agree with that.
And you're talking about the Stonewall Inn, which is where trans people in New York would meet to discuss what they were going to do at the Stonewall Inn. It was a meeting place for the LGBT community in New York. They wanted sex verification, just to use the pronouns that they respectively believe and wanted, which is only fair because a birth certificate isn't something someone chose, it's just what it is medically. The spontaneous protest broke out within the Stonewall Inn being disrupted a meeting. They have to speak out, and Marsha, as a trans Black woman, felt the need to protest, felt the need to be heard, and that's what she got to do when it came down to it. How do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel about Black Lives Matter, the cannabis community, and LGBT community crossing over in 2020?
Well, I think everything is coming to light because they all of those groups of minorities, they all matter and they all intertwine with each other. When people say Black Lives Matter, I think sometimes they forget that also Black trans lives matter and such as that. So collectively as a whole, they protest to be heard and to stand up against a problem of the public. So I definitely think like everything is intertwined. We did this for Pride, which became an annual thing that started with the Stonewall riots. And then now Black Lives Matter is becoming more prioritized and people are finally becoming more aware of this.
Yeah, all at once. And some people would say it's overwhelming, but it's only overwhelming just because it hasn't been discussed for so long and people are enraged and people are taking action all at once because it's greater to take action all at once with more than to do it with less. Because if you're going to do something, do it big. And especially in New York, with the protests, with the rioting, people are enraged. A lot of people see it indifferent, but it's just minorities, like you said, have been underlooked, have been treated poorly, make up most of the prison system, and then being a minority, it includes the LGBT community, which is filled with minorities as well. So it all coincides together as one big fight to help.
Exactly. Just to be free from discrimination and violence.
Exactly. And that is what's happening here. I'm glad that we can speak about it peacefully. A lot of people we've seen on social media have been going against it, especially since there's so many Black queer advocates with the Black Lives Matters movement. Everyone just, once again, attacking minorities, Black lives, not seeing that it's not all lives matters, it's trans lives, Black lives that matter right now. Because they're not saying all lives don't matter, they're just saying right now, these lives need your help.
Exactly.
Some would say like today's cannabis conversation is no longer dominated by who has access to the plant, but who is benefiting and profiting from it. It's legalization, which again, just like I said, like it's legalization. A lot of minorities are imprisoned for the sale of the recreational use. While there is a large community of white investment, white male dispensaries making money, never facing any criminal charges, no matter which way they started, while there's men doing 20 years, many years plus, like an outrageous amount of time for a minor crime that could literally pretty much bring down the population of a prison system.
I definitely think those charges are just completely unfair. Sadly, it's just corruption within our system. Obviously, when they see a person of color holding weed, weed, they assume the worst, and sadly, they become charged and brutalized from the system compared to these white men who are actually making a profit off of medical uses of weed. So obviously it's something that I disagree with, of course. I just think that the system is completely corrupt in that fact.
Yeah, because the LGBT community, the Black male of America, are all represented and just need the help and the voices and numbers to be heard. And right now, with the protests going on, we're using our voices to the full capacity, being heard, recognizing a community that will go unnoticed, will go treated horribly under any other circumstances. And I feel like 2020 right now is the time to capitalize on using multiple voices and having the structure and power to be heard altogether, especially with trans and Black men within the cannabis world, just facing recognition with legalization and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you feel about just like how people have capitalized within the cannabis community, especially like places like California? Everyone's always talking about let's go to California, like in movies and social media, like it's the cannabis holy grail when people talk about California.
Well, I think California is such a staple mark because legalization of cannabis, it really wouldn't have became legalized if it wasn't for the LGBTQ community. And that's, as you said, like before, that's because of the AIDS epidemic that happened. So also they use it for mental disorders, like you said before as well.
Yeah, and it was the trans community that advocated for the legalization of cannabis.
Exactly. Especially since states are legalizing it for both recreational and medicinal. So California is a big thing about that because of basically the LGBT community that started out there.
Yeah.
So that and that it's becoming legalized, they really represent it there. Obviously, it's a left state, so things are more advocated there.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like California is the holy grail, just like I said. It's accepting of the LGBT community, of the cannabis world that literally go together. Trans activists push for this, and this is the state that everything is going on, just like New York. New York is still behind in the cannabis world and the legalization. But it was all done by trans community. It was done to help the trans community and the LGBT community use as a coping mechanism, especially for medical use, and just to give the community something more.
Yeah.
As the LGBT community is very underrepresented, just something as small as this act by the trans activists really spoke volumes, especially for two different minorities, just Black men versus Black trans men, coming together to find a solution for one big thing in the time of 2020.
Yeah, and like before, what they are fighting for is freedom and equality. Because right now, that's something that, sadly, racism has been exposed at its peak right now in 2020. And what the different groups of minorities that are fighting, especially the Black community and the Black trans community within that, they are just fighting to be seen as equal.
Yeah.
Which they shouldn't be in 2020.
And the Black man has always been here, but the activist movement for HIV and AIDS and using cannabis for medical use started really up in the 1990s in California. The activists were pushing for medical cannabis laws, the AIDS crisis was so damaging, like during the 1990s. So this was something that really needed to be pushed and legalized, be given to this community just to help out, because either way they're gonna go unnoticed, unrecognized. The least they could do is give them this.
Yeah, exactly.
If they don't like give us an inch, like at least. And that's how the 1990s was working around cannabis and LGBT community and AIDS, and now it's something to spiritly, with full spirits, high spirits, to celebrate when it comes to Pride Month and all the Pride parades and just like all the rainbow flags in support, all the amazing outfits, just like yearly RuPaul Drag Race, just showing support for the skills that a queer community has, and just like representing them and using his platform. Do you know about RuPaul?
No.
RuPaul's Drag Race. It's just another outlet for the trans community to use when dressing in drag, especially something that started underground clubs, that really helped, especially during like harder times, for a good secret life, a hideaway. Now people pay so much money when they're on trips and like want to go to burlesque clubs like that also have drag races in them. I would say the cannabis community, the LGBT community, and the Black Lives Matter situation at hand really sought their opportunity in 2020 with all these voices to use their platform, just like other queer people have been using their platform to help the community and to help raise awareness and keep pushing for equality and not to be oppressed by their peers.
Yeah. Especially using social media, that is the biggest platform that people could use and to raise awareness. So definitely it is at its peak right now.
Yes, exactly. Everything could be caught at, with a smartphone. This is how it all started, with the video recording. Many lives before this, the trans community just like going unrecognized and abused by society. It has also been caught on camera. It's all caught on camera, and it all starts with a video, which I feel like is what the 21st century has expanded on. Using their smartphone, pulling out their smartphone, because the least they could do is record to help when the time comes, even though many such circumstances come with recording, they still come up with a different response to a situation that happened, and then everyone takes to social media. Like right now, Black Lives Matter, everybody's voicing their opinion the only way they know how, which is with social media.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And like, have you partaken? Like, what would you say about your timeline, your feed, just being used as an outlet to express everybody's like enragement or just like how they feel on the situation at hand?
Yeah, of course. So usually around this time, my social media timelines are really happy because of Pride. But because of everything that has been happening, there's anger in the world, and it's been obviously shown through all social media platforms, YouTube, even retail stores, Twitter, Instagram. Everyone is advocating for Black Lives Matter right now. And last week it was at its peak. Even though this is not a trend, it was at its peak last week because of everything that just happened. And definitely when I was scrolling through my timeline, it was a lot of pain. You could see a lot of anger, frustrations, and you could see that through posts, through people's tweets. It was just all over. It was flooding on the Blackout Tuesday, which was the Black Square posting of it. Just so much, and so many people talking out and speaking their opinion, advocating for Black Lives Matter, those who had differing opinions. It was just all over every type of social media platform.
Yeah, exactly. I would say my Twitter specifically has a lot of situations going on where people are responding and voicing their opposite opinions or their same opinions. As a part of the Gen Z millennial generation, I feel like this is the best way possible to advocate and use our voices. That we can't protest, especially with things like health fears and risking your life with other legal situations. Um, I feel like this is all one big movement to capitalize on, to use multiple voices, and I'm glad that you are seeing the positive effects of what's happening within social media, what's happening within the real world, what's happening within minority communities like the trans, the queer community, and Black lives, whether it be men and women. We just need to make sure to recognize them, and just like our voices help within the LGBT community and the cannabis community and Black Lives Matter. And I just wanted to just say thank you for seeing the outlook and the bigger meaning and the bigger picture behind that, and thank you for taking the time to talk to me today about our cannabis and LGBT community and being unrecognized and being oppressed and where it all started.
Of course, no, thank you so much for talking to me and having me.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.